Hey everyone, it's Nancy Seiler. I'm going to start this Facebook Live here in a minute. Um, it is 1:02 p.m. and I'm going to get started. So let me know that you hear me and you see me, and just write it down in the comment box there. All right, so I'm going to get started. Again, my name's Nancy Seiler. I'm a golden working artist with Golden Artist Colors, and I am a watercolor painter. I do a lot of nature journaling, and I'm an acrylic painter as well. I also do a little bit of oil and cold wax medium. And I'm uh, coming to you from my office in Missoula, Montana. I'm a working artist in San Diego, California, as well as Montana. So I've been up here since about March, up north, and um, looking forward to talking to you about watercolors and iridescent watercolors with QoR Watercolors. We're also going to talk about different surfaces, so we'll get going on that. I'm a little concerned because I don't see anybody signing on, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. So let me know if you're there. Okay, thanks, Lee. I'm going to get going. Don't see anyone on there. Kathy Jennings, let me know if you're there. She's our materials application specialist at Golden with QoR. Really glad you let me know you were there, Lee. I was wondering if I had the right time. I'm in Mountain Time, and I know it's 3 o'clock Eastern Time. So let's get going. So today we're going to talk about drawing butterflies. I've got a couple specimens here that are pinned on foam core here, so you can see the back and the front. These were given to me. I did not collect them. But if you want to draw butterflies yourself, you can actually go to a natural history center near where you live. You could get online and draw from photos online. You could, I suppose, catch your own butterflies, although I don't necessarily recommend that. I'd rather see them pollinating the flowers. So anyway, we're going to talk about how iridescent colors over here and QoR watercolors, these are all QoR watercolors, can be mixed together for iridescent effects. As you may know, butterflies have scales on their wings. And since it's really hard to see the scales because they're so tiny, I found a photo online by Lyndon Gladhill, and that person does a lot of really close-up photography on butterfly wings. So if you were to look at butterfly wings very, very closely under electron microscope, this is what you would see. And it's got a lot of iridescent reflection. It's what we see a lot of in nature with, say, mountain bluebirds or butterflies, moths, dragonflies. You can see a lot of this iridescent, and it is because of light bouncing off of it. So we're going to talk about how QoR watercolors can be used to get a similar effect. Here is an example of this is QoR watercolors mixed with pearl, silver, and gold, just using the a couple samples of color. Right here, you see the pure pigment right here. And then this is mixed with pearl, with silver, which darkens it a little bit, and with gold. These iridescent colors are very granulated, so sometimes it's mica flakes, so sometimes it will darken or lighten your color depending on how much you mix into it. You can also get some effects by layering. So say put a pure pigment down on paper and then put the iridescent right over it. So that's an example on watercolor paper. Here's an example on black gesso. So you see the pure pigment right here, which doesn't show up very well. But when you mix it with gold, silver, and pearl here, you can really see some cool effects. Let's see. There you go. You can see how it reflects there. Pretty neat. All right. Okay. So thanks, Amy Shawley. Apparently my comments aren't coming up, so I hope Kathy Jennings is there to answer your questions. I'm not sure what to do about that. Let me see if I can figure this out. Frustrating. All right, well, okay, so let's put these away. This is a tiger swallowtail. This is a Parnassus. I want to show you a couple examples of what we're going to be using today. We've got dioxazine purple. I'm going to show you some examples with that. This is a very highly staining, semi-transparent watercolor. You only need a little bit of this and you get such a nice deep color. This is quinacridone magenta. It's transparent and again highly staining. Little goes a long way. And then I'm also going to show cobalt teal, which is semi-opaque and partly staining and granulating. Granulating means the pigment tends to float on the surface of the paper, and as it dries, it settles into the texture of the paper. So we'll see some of that going on here. Okay. All right, and then we've got the iridescent colors, which are iridescent gold fine. You can see a little bit of the reflection on there. And we have iridescent silver, iridescent pearl. So I did some samples on watercolor paper here of showing these different pigments, quinacridone magenta, dioxazine purple, and cobalt teal here. And I also then let that dry and then put a gold wash with the iridescent gold, silver wash, and a pearl wash over that. And you can see the reflection. I'm going to isolate that a little bit so you can see the difference. Here we have just quinacridone magenta. Here it is with gold mixed on top, just as a layer. And then down here, I've got gold mixed with quinacridone magenta, with dioxazine purple, and with cobalt teal. Also silver here and pearl. And so you can see the kind of reflections you get with these iridescent colors. All right. We're also going to talk about different grounds that these colors can be painted on. So Golden makes, QoR and Golden make these acrylic grounds. This is cold press ground, which looks like watercolor paper in a jar. It's got a real cold press feel to it once it dries, like cold press paper. You can see, maybe see the texture there a little bit. And here we have the quinacridone magenta, and then mixed with gold here. You can see the reflection with silver, which darkens the pigment a little bit, and with the pearl, which is very subtle. The second ground we have is light dimensional ground, which is very light in weight, in actual weight. So you could put this ground on a very large, like a large board. Say you wanted to do a 36 by 48 watercolor painting, you could put this ground on that board and paint right onto the surface, and it's like painting on a real lightweight surface, so you could pick that board up and ship it very cheaply because it's such lightweight. So you can see how the paint just moves on this light dimensional ground. Again, quinacridone magenta mixed with gold, silver, and pearl. Next one, watercolor ground. This is very absorbent. You can see how absorbent that is. I'll show you a little bit later how these work when you paint on them. But you can see how it moves here. This is again gold. You can really see the reflection there. Silver and pearl mixed in with the paint. The last surface I want to show you is black gesso. So this is pretty fun. You can get some nice effects on this if you'd like to paint on a dark surface. Here you can see the quinacridone magenta doesn't show up really at all, but when you mix it with gold and silver and pearl, you can pick up a little bit of that pigment color in with the iridescent. So you can get some really beautiful effects with that. So we'll come back to those. I want to show you a couple samples in my journal. So I do a lot of nature journaling, and I use this little QoR Mini when I do that. This is, Golden makes this little QoR Mini that's great for journaling, just tossing in your bag. I put all my supplies in a bag so I'm ready to go. And so these are examples of recent journaling. This was fishing out on the Wise River a couple weeks ago. This is an exoskeleton of a stonefly, and this technique I'm going to show you with drawing butterflies can work with any kind of animal that is symmetrical. So it could work with dragonflies, butterflies, moths, any kind of insect that is similar on both sides, looking down on it, that is. So it's an example. Show you a couple more examples here. Here's one taken, it's just a week-long stay in Saugatuck, Michigan with some friends a couple years ago, but I found a hummingbird clearwing moth, which I'd never seen before. So just a quick example of how you can journal an animal like that really simply. And I usually look down on these because they're more symmetrical and they're a little bit easier to draw quickly. As you get a little more familiar with drawing butterflies symmetrically, then you can do other things, like I said, like dragonflies. You can also do animal skulls. This is from a lynx at the Natural History Center, and this was drawn, one side of it was drawn and then transferred to the other side so that I can draw the other side. And then I just used the same tracing paper to transfer the outline over here, and then I just drew the inside, the underside of the skull. So I used the same drawing on tracing paper for both of these, and I'll get to that in a minute. Here's some other examples from the Natural History Center here in Missoula of different bugs in their collection, and something to do on a cold day where I can't get outside. Drawing pin specimens is a little bit less intimidating, because then you can look at them really closely, get your magnifying glass out, and take a good look. And then again, draw one side, and then it's easier to either mimic the other side by just looking as you draw down the other side, or using tracing paper to trace one side and then transfer it onto the other side. Couple more examples of nature journaling. You can turn your journal. I use a Moleskine journal. That's what this is. And I can turn it on its side and do a nice vertical piece. Here's what I'm talking about with tracing paper. This is an insect, really crazy looking insect, not from around Montana, but this is about the same size of it. But I drew one side, and then I placed tracing paper, you can see the drawing, and traced the side I drew, and then I was able to place it on the other side and transfer it down on the paper. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Here's some more examples of quick drawings in my journal. This is just observing butterflies out puddling, which is what male butterflies have to do to reproduce, to get minerals from puddles. So a lot of times you'll see butterflies around water sources. Again, this is the Parnassus I was talking about here. And this is the same butterfly. No, it's a little bit different, but similar. And then again, this is the tracing of one half of it, and then transfer it onto this other side. All right, if you're just joining me, again, I'm Nancy Seiler. I'm a golden working artist, and I'm coming to you from Missoula, Montana. I am going to see if I can see my, oh yay, I can see some comments finally. All right, coming to you from Missoula, Montana. All right. So, see if I can see my, oh yay, I can see some comments finally. All right, so hi Shannon. All right, let me go down through here. Kathy's on, that's great. Really glad. All right, so hi Shannon. All right, so good to see this. Valerie's on, awesome. So sorry I can't see my comments on my computer screen for some reason. There's always, it seems to be always something that happens, and it's even my birthday, you guys, so can you believe it? All right, so anyway, here is a moth that I did, same, and this is using, this has some, oh, sorry. And this has some gold over it. This is a gold sheen that was put over the moth. And again, the same process of tracing one side and then transferring to the other. Here's a couple little studies of a white-lined sphinx moth. These come to evening primroses at night. If you stick around till dusk and watch your primroses open up, these guys will come by and pollinate at night. This is a moth, and then half of a monarch. And this, if I wanted to go back, I could trace this side, transfer it over to this side. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And this is the butterfly I'm going to use. Oh, thanks for the birthday wishes, y'all. All right, thank you so much. So this is a Western tiger swallowtail. You can see the sheen of the iridescent on there. And again, this is similar species. And it's always important to look at the backs because they are different than the fronts. They might be a different color completely. And sometimes they're camouflaged so that they can't be seen when their wings are folded up, straight up. So this guy, I'm going to show you step by step with this, and I've drawn this out, but this was basically a class I did on drawing butterflies, and I'll post the step by step on my blog, nancyseiler.com, and you can see the step by step. And again, there is a tracing of one side of the butterfly, and we'll come back to that. Okay, so the materials I use are, I have two pencils here. They're Stadler Mars Lumograph. I just have always liked Stadler. Way back when I was in high school, I used rapidograph pens that were made by Mars Stadler, and so I'm just kind of, I really like that brand for graphite pencils. I have two hardnesses here. I have 2H, which is harder, a harder graphite, which is going to enable you to keep a sharper point for a longer period of time since the graphite is harder. And then I have an HB pencil where the graphite is softer. So this is what I use. I use these two for transferring. This one is softer, so it's easier for the lead to transfer to the other side of the paper. And this one's harder, so I can press through the tracing paper a little bit and transfer that lead. So I'll show you how I do that. And this is a drawing I did based on this journal entry. And I just enlarged it so you could see it better. And I'll go through the steps on how to draw a butterfly pretty quickly and easily. They're kind of tricky, so don't get too worked up about it. Just give it a try sometime. So what I've done here is I've started with a vertical line. And the way I get the vertical line is I just use this handy dandy free ruler from Missoula's Office City, and I draw a graphite line with, I'm going to use my HB because it's a softer lead. I don't have to press as hard, and it's easier to erase because it's a softer lead. So I just draw the line vertically, and you can see that there. And then when I start drawing the butterfly, this is like twice size, you can tell, or maybe a little bit more, but I wanted to get it big so you can see it. So I would draw one side of the butterfly here in pencil, and its antenna. And then I'm not going to draw on this side. Yet. I'm just working on one side. So I draw the butterfly, body, head, thorax, and abdomen. All of the legs, when you look on the back, all of the legs come off the thorax always on insects. You don't see anything on the abdomen or coming off the head, of course, but the legs always grow out of the middle. So remember, always look at your specimen really closely so that you understand how it's put together. And again, using specimens at the Natural History Center or the museum is a great idea. You can go in and draw animals, mammals, birds, insects, all kinds of things, and they don't move around. So we did a lot of that when I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh back in the 80s. We went to the Carnegie Mellon, or the Pittsburgh Museum of Natural History, and went in and drew dioramas. So it's a great way to draw without the animals moving. So the next thing I would do after I draw the body is I would draw out the wings. And I've already done this in pencil, in light pencil. You can see here it's very light, and I'm using an HB. And I'm looking to see how the wings attach here. They also attach to the thorax, so that's important to note too. And then what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and ink this because I want to show you how to transfer. So I'll quickly ink this in. I'm not going to take too much time with it. I'm using a micron pen. I like these micron pens because they are permanent. They don't bleed. I can watercolor over them. This is a Pigma Micron 01. All right. Again, I'll do this quickly. This is a really fun class to do with everyone. And they use, students will use a loupe or a magnifying glass to look really closely. I mentioned that earlier. And it's really amazing when you start looking really closely at anything in nature, how amazing it is. So, you know, take your time and look closely. You want to always be referring back to your specimen as you draw as well. So I tell students too, you know, don't look at your paper so much when you're sketching. Look at your specimen. There's no information on the paper, is there? So I'm just going to sketch this in, and then we'll get into transferring. Okay, so now I have one side of the butterfly done, and what I'm going to do now, and I've already done this to save a little time, is I get a piece of tracing paper. This is just real simple tracing paper. I put the vertical line on there. I transfer that as well, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm just going to line this up on my drawing and tape it down. You want to always have a hinge. That's called a hinge. So you can, before you take it off, you can see that you've drawn everything, that you've traced everything. And so what I'm going to do is trace all of this with my HB pencil because this is a softer lead. Just checking out some questions here. All right, good. So I trace everything with the HB, softer lead, so that's going to transfer easier. So I get that all done. I also trace my center line. Then I take off the tape off the tracing paper. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over like so, line up the vertical line and the body of the insect, and tape it on this side. Hinge it on this side, okay? Now you can see I've got the tracing facing down now. The graphite is on this side, so I flipped it over. I've placed it on this side of my watercolor paper. I'm just using some Strathmore watercolor paper on this. And then what I'm going to do, and I've already done this, I've already transferred it, but to show you, I would take my 2H and trace this and go over these lines very carefully, making sure that I'm tracing all of this information onto the paper. So you would just go over it with the 2H. You don't want to press too hard because then you'll dent your paper underneath. But what the 2H does is it keeps a sharper point, and you just want to make sure you don't tear your tracing paper as you do this. And you would transfer all the information that you just drew from this side onto this side. And so I've already transferred that. I've already gone ahead and done that, and you can see that's all right here. So then I have the full butterfly. And I would go in at that point, and I'll just do a little bit of this to show you. But I would go in and draw the other side. I'm not going to draw the vertical line, but I'm just going to go ahead and draw this side, like so. And so you would continue on drawing that. All right. So let's see how we're doing on time. About halfway, that's okay. So I would go ahead and finish drawing all this in. I'm not going to do it now, but you can see how you end up with the full butterfly, or whatever you decide to draw. Here it is. Okay, let's go back here. So any questions, anyone so far? I see that Kathy's answering a lot of them. Again, I'm Nancy Seiler with Golden Artist Colors and QoR Watercolors, and I'm a working artist out of Missoula, Montana and San Diego, California. If you have questions that can't be answered here right now, you can always email help@goldenpaints.com and someone will get right back to you. All right. So let's get into the grounds, the different grounds. So take a look at these grounds and what they look like spread out on the paper or on different surfaces. So the first thing I want to show you, I've got some black gesso here. It's just a mat board with black gesso on it. Here's the black gesso. So that looks like, if you paint it on paper, this black gesso, I'm using just a inexpensive acrylic brush. This has been used many times. You can see it's covered with paint, acrylic paint. Don't use any of your watercolor brushes with the acrylics. It's just gonna, your watercolor brushes, keep them just for watercolor. The watercolor brushes I'm using for watercolor are Princeton today, and it's a Princeton Velvet Touch number 8 round. You can see that. And the Princeton Elite 3/4 inch flat brush here. And these are synthetic brushes. They're not too expensive, and they work great for watercolor as long as you can get a nice point with your round. Usually for journaling, that's great. If I was doing botanical illustration, which is, I've done a lot of that in the past, I would use a little bit more expensive brushes for that to get more detail. So I've wet my brush. You always want to wet your brush before you use any kind of acrylics. And then you can see that the gesso, you can easily paint that onto paper or board and create a nice surface to do that iridescent watercolor on. Just let that dry thoroughly. Again, this is acrylic, so, but it's going to give you a nice feel to this. So I'm going to wipe this brush off. You always want to wipe your brush off, your acrylics off, before you rinse it. All right, so that's the first surface. And then the other surfaces I'm going to show you on this gessoed board that's been dry. So let's get those out. I've got, again, watercolor ground, cold press ground, and light dimensional ground. And I'll quickly put those on this surface. So watercolor ground, again, use your acrylic brush. This is kind of runny. This can be kind of hard to see here. This can be thinned out with a little bit of water too, but you can put this down in a couple layers. Let one layer dry. And I'm showing you on black because it's easier to see. But you can see it's kind of transparent, but when you put it on white paper, you won't be able to see that, but you'll still have this nice absorbent surface once it dries. So that's watercolor ground. And again, wipe off your brush and then rinse it. The other two grounds I'm going to put on with a palette knife. So this one is cold press ground. Looks like this. Kind of hard to see. It's kind of thick, but it can be spread out kind of thickly. You can even carve into this and paint over it. So there's some different options with this. You want to let this dry thoroughly too, and then you can paint with watercolor right on the surface of that. You might be asking, why don't you just use paper? But this is, again, going back to that idea of painting on cradled board, such as this. This is a cradled board, wood birch panel. And this actually is a little watercolor on watercolor paper that I've attached to this cradled board using Golden's gloss medium or soft gel medium, and attached, put the medium on the board and also on the back of the painting, and glued it down onto this cradle board. And then after it dries, you flip it over, cut it out with an X-Acto knife, and then you can varnish these with two coats of gloss varnish to keep the color really bright. This has been varnished. And then 2 coats of satin varnish to bring the surface back to what looks like watercolor paper again. So there's information on that I'm sure Kathy will share on varnishing watercolors. So again, getting back to why would you use this on different surfaces? Well, it opens up a whole world of options on painting on different surfaces. So here's light dimensional ground. It's much lighter in weight, very thick. It's like kind of like frosting, kind of feels like frosting, but it's sort of spongy when it's dry, but it's great. You can put over a huge surface and it's not going to add a lot of weight to your painting. You'll be able to lift it up and hang it on the wall without help. All right. So let's get into doing some examples on these surfaces with watercolor. All right, I have a couple more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right. So let's go back to the desk cam, and I'm going to start with, got these prepared here, different surfaces. Got golden black gesso, QoR watercolor ground. This is dry. Cold press ground, and you can see how thick that is on there. You can see a little bit of that texture. And the light dimensional ground. You can see the thickness and pretty smooth texture on that. But let's mix up, I'm going to use cobalt blue and some different iridescence. Okay, let's see. Looks like Kathy's answering the questions. Thanks, Kathy. It's a little bit odd not seeing the questions right next to my my feed, but thank you for helping me out with that. I'm going to use a flat brush on this, and I'm going to use cobalt teal here. So QoR watercolors are made with a different binder than any other watercolor on the market, and it's called Aquazol. And it dries completely clear, and it's very flexible. So it's great for painting on these different grounds and not cracking. Other watercolors can crack with age, and Aquazol is very bendable, very flexible. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of this cobalt teal in the middle here, and then rinse my brush. And cobalt teal is a little bit granulating. You're going to find that these iridescent colors, I have gold, silver, and pearl out on my palette, are very granulating, and you need a little bit more than you might think to get the effect, but not that much. You can see on my brush. And I'm just going to mix that right into the blue, the cobalt teal, and you can see how beautiful, like you get kind of a green with that. Let's put that on watercolor ground. You can see how absorbent it is. I'm going to add a little bit more water. And again, you can put more gold in there, and you'll find that when it dries, it'll dry with a sheen of that gold. So let's see this on light dimensional ground. And you can go in with a little water and just let it move. You can see how this has been moving on the watercolor ground. Starting to see some effects. But you're not going to really see that shine until that water shine dries. And then the cold press ground. Again, mixing in gold and teal. And you can also put quite a bit of water on this and let it move. So let's try this on black gesso as well. And you're going to see a lot more gold with this one, a lot more of the iridescent. You can see that right away. So it gives you some options on painting on black with watercolor, these iridescents. Let's see. Do the grounds dry clear? No, I see that Kathy's answered that. No, they don't. Yeah. All right. Let's do a couple more mixes on this with some other iridescents. And I just use this white plastic palette because then I can just wipe it off, start using the next color. Put some cobalt teal in here. Rinse my brush. I have two containers of clear water here, and I'm using one. Has gotten a little muddy from the other colors, but now I've got a clear water that I can rinse all of that off. So 2 buckets work great. Here's that silver on there. Look at that. Silver and cobalt teal. So you can really see how that iridescent pops up on black. Here it is on cold press ground. Changes the color, doesn't it? And again, you'll see that as it dries, get a little bit more shiny. But the way with butterflies, you know, I just love putting that last layer of iridescent gold or silver or pearl over the wings just to give that a nice sheen. You can see how absorbent that watercolor ground is. Let me put a lot of cobalt teal on there so you can see that. And then look at how this light dimensional ground is drying. It's really pretty. Do a little bit of that on here. Okay, and then lastly, pearl. Wipe the palette, and I'm going to bring in some cobalt teal again to the middle. Rinse my brush and add quite a bit of this pearl. And again, like I said, these are really granulating, so you'll find that you just need a little bit more of this pigment than you do with the colored pigments. The iridescence you need more of than the pigments. So isn't that pretty? So these will dry really nicely. Here's again that pearl on watercolor ground. Let's add a little water to that. Let it move. You get some really nice effects. And the cold press ground. And lastly, the black gesso. Carol Ann, I see you're writing a children's book about a fly. This would work great for that. Nice iridescent color for his wings and his body. Maybe a blue bottle fly. So let's go back to these dried samples so you can see again how this looks dry. So once that cobalt teal and those iridescents dry, you're going to get a nice shimmer like this. And these are just so fun to use with bugs or birds if you do birds. I know Amy Shawley Paquette does a lot of birds, so you might want to think about using these iridescence with for their feathers. You probably already have, Amy. And again, watercolor ground. So you can see how they shimmer. Yeah, so gosh, anyway, that's my session for today. Let's open it up for more questions. Anything about nature journaling or botanical illustration, or using these acrylic grounds, using these iridescents. I'd be happy to answer these questions. I'm sorry for the beginning, the comments, I couldn't see them, so I was like thinking I didn't have the right day or the right time. I had the right day. I knew it was my birthday, so I knew it was the right day, but I was thinking, I know it's 2 hours difference from Eastern, so it was weird when I didn't see the comments, and I apologize for that, everybody. So yeah, but anyway, let's see what you got here for questions. Anything else? Yes, the shimmer of beetles. Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, beetles. If any of you have gone to, some people use beetles. I remember at Art Basel in Miami 5, 6 years ago now, people, this artist had used beetle shells to make into art. And so it was just all iridescent and interference colors. It's beautiful. So think about when you see these objects in nature that you want to draw or paint, that you can use golden iridescent acrylics or interference acrylics, which I'm not going to go into too much today. But mostly the QoR iridescence, the gold, the silver, and the purple, or sorry, gold, silver, and pearl iridescence. So QoR makes 80 colors, 80 different pigments, plus 3 iridescents. And they're just amazing. Really great color. I hope you try them out. Let's see. Anything else? What's next, Valerie? I'm not sure. Valerie lives here in Montana. And yeah, I'm not sure what's next, Valerie. We'll have to see. But any other questions? It's been really, really nice being here with you. I'm going to go on the river tonight on a raft and just relax. And we have hot weather here today, so that'll be nice. Please let me know, or Golden at help@goldenpaints.com, and let them know if you have any questions from today, or using any, as you go forward, using these grounds or these pigments or these iridescents, and they can answer those questions. If you want to take a look at my blog, go to nancyseiler.com, and that's here. I have my paper, nancyseiler.com, or QoR Colors is the watercolor website, and then we have help@goldenpaints.com if you have any questions. So I'm going to post a few things on my blog that's at my website, and you can take a look at some of the examples I showed you today of bugs and butterflies. And I will post the step-by-step on there of drawing butterflies and transferring them so you can try it yourself. So for a journal, mixed media, or heavier paper for watercolor, yeah. So, okay, well, there you go. I hope you got something out of this and learned a few new tips about iridescent watercolors and drawing butterflies. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate you being here with me. Bye-bye.